Hi, I'm Lena Darnay from Keep Indiana Learning, a department of CIESC. Today we're going to take a quick look at how to use Google Forms in a branching way to give students choice and voice when they're working on a project. And it's simple, but you have to plan ahead a little bit when you're setting this up. So I've got an example here talking about figurative language. The first question that I would ask students is just a quick check to see what they already know. You can leave this required so that they have to put in something, but if you're afraid they won't have much background knowledge and you don't want to get them stuck on that first question, you can make sure to uncheck the required option. My next question would be how they would want to learn about this topic. I've given them 3 options in this form: watch a video, read an article, or listen to a podcast. That allows access for both my auditory and visual learners. So here's my video. I've went ahead and inserted that by using the add video option here. My article is more of an infographic this time, and so I've inserted that with the picture option. And then I have found my podcast, and I put that in as a title. So now I'm going to show you how to set up those branching options. After my first 2 questions, I want them to be able to go to a certain section of my form based upon their answer. So I first need to put in those sections. That can be done over here on the tool options. At the very bottom, there's an add section. If I give that a click, it's going to break things into sections. Now, I put that section in and it actually moved my section to break into this before we begin. What do you already know about figurative language? I want that to go actually here with my options. So I can quickly click on those 6 dots up there and drag that question down to the section that I want it to be in. This first section is that basic section that starts the branching. So I'm going to call this Choose Your Own Learning Adventure. And then based upon how they answer these questions, I want them to go to a particular section. So I need to add in those sections. So I'm going to come down here and click my section below. So I'm going to call this one, because it's right above my article option. So this would be, and then I can give them some directions here in the description of this section, because that'll show up at the top. So I might tell them how I want them to interpret this, some things to look for, some keywords that I might trigger their learner skills to pay attention in a certain way to this article, or for this one, it's more of an infographic. I'm going to come up here and insert my section before my video options. Let me add that section. And same thing, I'm going to call this the video option. And in my description, as the teacher, I would trigger them to listen carefully for certain pieces, give them a little bit of information maybe about the video, how long it is, so they can plan. This is especially important when you're working with an asynchronous activity and your students need to know how much time to budget for watching this video. So this one is only 5 minutes. So I would definitely want to include the length of a video anytime I put a video in something for my students. And then my last one is going to be the podcast option. So I'll go ahead and insert my section before podcast. Again, use that description space to give them some information about how you as the teacher would like them to engage with this option. And then the last piece would be after they have either watched the video, looked at my infographic, listened to the podcast, I want to know, did they get what I need them to get out of this? So I would have 2 or 3 questions at the end that everybody would get, and it would allow me as the teacher to check for their understanding about the topic. So my final section would be my show what you learned section. And again, I might give them some nudges that they could go back and refer to the video. They could go back and look at the article if they wanted to choose that option and listen to the podcast. That is fine if they wanted to do all 3. We're really giving them that opportunity to solidify their understanding in whatever method they would like. So I would give them some of that information in the description, and then I would have the 3 or 4 questions that would check for understanding. So that's how you break it into sections. Now let's take a look at how you make those branching options happen. So I'm going to come back up to the top. And so right now, my first section is just the description of this activity. So I'm telling them that we're going to learn about figurative language and that they're going to have options. And then it will have a next button at the bottom. In the next section, I want to make sure to put some information in this question that triggers them to go to a certain question. So I'm going to do that here. I do the 3 little dots down by the required slider, and I would go to section based on answer. So if they pick watch a video, we want them to go to the video option. If they pick read an article, we want them to go to the article option. And if they pick the podcast, same thing, we're just going to tell it to go to the podcast option. So now after they have watched the video, we want them to default go to the show what you learned. They don't need to go to also the article and then the podcast before they get to those show what you know questions. So that's an important part of this branching form opportunity here. So after each section of the 3, we want to go to that last section that gives them the questions. And I do want to remind my students in the description that they can go back to any of the other options if they need a little more review. Once I've got all those branching options set, I will come up here to my settings for the form, and I'll decide if I want to collect email addresses from my students. That would allow me to know who chose that without having to ask them that question. I tend to do that for things like this. I can set this as a quiz, and that would give it some point values for those check for understanding questions if I want to do that. So there's some options here. And then at the end, instead of your response has been recorded, I want to give a little personality to that and just add something there that will show them at the end. Or I could even tell them what they're supposed to do next in this confirmation message, like go back to Google Classroom and do this next step. So this gives you an opportunity to, again, put your teacher voice into their space, even if this is an asynchronous or an at-home activity. And I probably want to uncheck this show link to submit another response. They're done after they've finished it. Click Save, and then now I need to trigger this to turn not into a form that I'm building, but into the quiz that they're taking. So I click the big Send button at the top, and I can find a link to this form right here. If I copy that, put that into my Google Classroom, put it into Canvas, put it into Schoology, however I'm delivering my content to them, I want to get this to them, I can put it here. You can also use this embed code in places where you've got access to that HTML side. So in a Canvas page or a Canvas assignment, you can embed that right in there. So either way, I want to get the kids to this location to take this branching form. I would use the Send button and then select either the link or the embed code. Now let's take a look at what this looks like. So the email address, that would be my student's email address. Click Next. Then I would have them answer this. And again, I did not make this required. And then I will pick an option and click Next. And then here would be my directions, and here's the video. And when they're finished watching that, they'll click Next, and then they'll answer those questions and click Submit. And they will, at the end, see that final presentation piece that we can customize in the Settings option. And that's a basic idea of how you can put some student choice and voice using a Google form with branching options.